He is back. My brother-in-law, Steve King, who is from one of the very, very first episodes called Marrying Into a Cowboy Family. I think it's still on the top 10 downloads of all time. Steve, welcome back to Cowboys Not Eggheads. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Good. And I appreciate Steve for all our YouTube listeners out there riding for the brand. It's one of the ethics of the Cowboys. So thank you for doing that.
No problem.
So Steve recently sent me or posted on social media a video of him branding his first calf, right? Is that what it was? Your first calf, right? That you were branding?
That was one.
First one. I'm sure you did like 1,000 after that. But I mean, it's really interesting. And people on YouTube were clearly interested in it. And we're still getting views every day. And so a little background for those who have not, Steve, this is like a radio program. Not everyone has listened to every episode. I know that's terribly shocking to hear, but so we'll have to update folks. You married my sister. Steve King is my brother-in-law, and he
That is
married my
correct.
sister. My sister was raised on the same ranch that I was, the Powderhorn Ranch, and our brother Will is now running that ranch. And Steve has been to the ranch many times over the years, but he hasn't really done some of the activities. And we talked about that, I think, in the first podcast, is that you'd never seen like a dog have placenta in its mouth and those kind of things.
That's true.
And so you actually went out to the Powderhorn Ranch here with your son Ben, who's Ben is 10, right?
Yep.
10.
Old, yep.
And so he's never been to branding. So tell us about your day, man. Tell us how did it go?
Well, it went better than I thought it would. I was never.
No, wait a minute. What you thought it was going to go bad? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? What were your expectations?
Well, I'm from the city. I'm from 20 minutes outside of London, and now I've never been afraid to witness anything of the such. We've all seen the movies. We've all seen the shows. We know what to expect. I knew what the smell to expect because I've burnt my
Oh
arm
yeah,
on
the smell is something. That's actually a real thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
burning flesh.
my brother-in-law Will, who runs the ranch, he was telling me, "Watch out for that smell. You won't like it." So I inadvertently burnt my arm on a heat lamp. Well, I know what the smell was like because that was lingering. Obviously, the cattle is a lot stronger, but it didn't bother me. I've always wanted to do the branding. Everyone from England, even in the rural areas, are not accustomed to the vastness of a ranch in the United States. My family come from rural England, and they've milked cows. That's as far as they'll go.
What was their? It's for comparison's sake. They came from rural England, so where their nearest neighbor was what? A half mile away, 50 yards away,
Oh,
20 yards away.
So if you can picture London, it was a 5 hour drive west. So
Okay.
it's in a county named Cornwall and very rural. I was grown. When I always visited there, I used to being around that kind of environment. But you ask any Englishman, they're fascinated with the whole ranch lifestyle, myself included.
So, but I mean, your your relatives that live in Cornwall. So them in their minds, it was vast, right, where they lived.
Yes.
But how was their nearest neighbor? Could you hit them with a rock, or did you have to drive 10 miles to see them? Because I mean, the comparison is where Steve was at. Because our nearest neighbor is approximately 3 to 5 miles away in one direction, and about 15 another, and about 12 the other. I mean, you get the point here.
Yes.
In Cornwall, was it? I don't think it would have been like that, right? I mean, how close were
Well,
folks, or how bunched together were people?
they had their residential areas, but when it comes to the farm life, it was a good 10 mile drive to anywhere, at least.
Okay, so your neighbors were far; they were spread apart there as well.
That's
Then,
correct. That's correct.
okay.
Now, but yeah, so I was in contact with Will so many times and asking, I'd love to do it, and he was really eager for me to come and experience that. And then I would see the shows like, I don't know, Yellowstone or whatever. And, that's just huge. And I know for a fact that it's not going to be that extensive, or you're going to get Carrie Underwood singing. And It's just not like that. It's you get your family
Well,
together.
no, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, you just it's a very secluded set and of people, ranch hands, family members, but it's
And Will's had the same specific guys for a long time.
that yeah,
He said my childhood friend Ed Qualley. I'm sure you met Ed. That was my best.
that's right.
You met Ed, right? And I was like my best friend growing up. I was a kid, and our cousin Luke, who we've talked about a little bit on this podcast. He trade. We do it exchanging labor. So he's on the Sunny Slope Ranch, and so when Sunny Slope brands, Powderhorn sends a man, and when the Powderhorn brands, the Sunny Slope sends a man. So it's always Luke. He's the guy that brands, and our nephew Grant was there, I'm sure.
Oh yes, yeah.
And my brother Will, and that's kind of the crew, right?
That is the crew. And hey, it's a process. I didn't realize how long that whole situation would take from herding the cattle to the area where they brand.
How big a bunch did they? And the other thing that's different about the Powderhorn branding than maybe so many people even in our Cherry County, a lot of folks in Cherry County will wait till they'll just do one big bunch, and it's a little bit, it's a different flair to it. And we actually use a calf table,
Hmm.
which is a lot different than some of the traditional brandings where you've got cowboys out on horses roping calves, and you've got a team of wrestlers that go wrestle the calf, which means basically that cowboy drags out the calf by rope, and you've got two there are two calf wrestlers, one on the head and one on the tail side, to hold the calf in place while he's being branded. Now, we never done that, and I don't know, would be better off knowing maybe the history than I do, but I think our philosophy was always, we were probably a little bit more eggheadish, and not really, but I mean, thought it through a little bit more as far as the branding goes, because the calf table is actually, in my opinion, a lot less stress on the calf, because versus being roped, and they could be roped by the head and drugged by the neck, or they could be roped by their hindquarters or whatever. But anyway, then the calf would be drug, and then you've got two men that are manhandling you, holding you down, and then you're getting castrated and vaccinated and branded sometimes simultaneously. This situation that you were at was just is a hydraulic calf table, and I haven't actually, Steve, seen the quote unquote new table they have, because it's different than the one that I remember. So I haven't actually branded with this new calf table that Will has gotten within the last 10 years. But
Well,
it's pretty humane. I mean, it's you just basically get
yeah,
a calf into a chute, and you put them on a table. Kind of going back to the day, just for our listeners, because I think they're interested in this. Did you participate in the roundup, or tell everybody what it takes? Because there's a lot of work in the corral that goes on as well before you start branding.
that's correct. So my experience was we were in Will's truck, my son Ben and I, and we would just enticing the cattle over with the sirens just to think they're getting fed, and they were, it's
And again,
bribery.
for the listeners, if you go on my YouTube page, I think I've got a video there somewhere of my brother calling cattle. But we feed what's called, we call it cake. It's just protein pellets, and
Yeah,
so my brother was doing was just leading the cattle into the corral with a pickup in the lead, and we use actually police sirens, your
it
standard police
works.
siren,
It
to call
works.
them in. Yeah.
So, yeah, well, once we got them into the corral, then there's separation between the.
How big? I'm sorry, Steve. How we'll say
I
a
do
couple
not
hundred.
know how many. It was a.
You're not supposed to talk about numbers. Remember, you're not supposed to say how many cattle, but
That's
it
true.
wasn't the whole herd. I know it wasn't every calf he's got, because he still have calves. He still has calves that need to be, or cows that need to calf, or to have their calf yet.
No one knows.
Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
No one knows what your head of cattle is. No one knows how vast your fields are. If you do ask, you're in deep shit, and that's going to be the way it
that's,
is.
that's right. My guess is, listeners, that it was probably a bunch. I think Will probably does 3 or 4 brandings a year, I think. And so my guess is, I'll give away how many cows he has, but my guess is it was probably 200-ish.
Yeah, but yeah, that we were actually with our inexperience and viewing pleasure and not being afraid. not going to get trampled. But we were actually told to stay in the pickup truck, because there was four of them there trying to guide the calves away from the mamas, and
Separate, yeah.
yeah, separate them.
So you didn't get in on the separation of the
No,
corral? Man, that's the part, that's fun part. That's where you usually get yelled at.
yeah,
Yeah, so you gotta, so basically you had somebody was running a gate, right?
yes,
And they were separating, trying to get calves into one part of the corral and keep the cows on the other. So you're just separating.
and I fully understood it. I was like, well, if I go up there, I screw up, get shouted at, and
That's
then it
part of the
just,
process, dude. I wish Will would have had you running the gate. It would have been fun.
yeah,
But that gate, who was running the gate?
that would have was Luke and Luke and Will himself. I mean, they got these flags now. They guiding the cattle away, separating them.
Yeah, distracting them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. You know, I wasn't, because Will asked me at the end of it, is what you expected, and I went, that was brilliant. I loved it, absolutely loved it.
What do you mean by brilliant? You English? What does that mean?
Well, it's
Awesome. I mean,
yeah,
cool.
it's awesome, cool, and that's something I would recommend to any outsider. Let's call them outsiders. I'm an outsider. I would love to see that. Love to see it. I
So
always go
we'll
back.
park the pickup in a place. So you're sitting in the truck while they're doing the separating, so you can see
Yes,
everything that's going on. That's
yes.
cool.
Yeah, I mean,
And how long do you think it? Go ahead. Go ahead.
how long?
Yeah.
We were in that truck for a good hour.
Yeah. Probably.
He always said, I'll be back in 10 minutes, but I mean, that's no disrespect to him or anything like that. But he was just, it's chaos. It's chaos. You got the
And there's a lot of
noise.
noise. That's the other thing. That the other thing people don't realize how less the cows are crying for their calves and vice versa, and so it's a rather loud atmosphere.
It is a loud atmosphere. The cows were, and there was all corralled into one section with the calves, and the cows were sniffing through the gates, and this was fascinating to see. They would be sniffing and sniffing away, and no, you're not my kid. Nope, you're not my kid. So then the noise got louder and louder, and I'm like, my son Ben was sitting next to me. I said, "Look at that! It's fascinating." Looking for smells only. It's looking for a grain of salt in a pepper pot. It's just not going to be there. Um, and so that was fascinating. And yep, lo and behold, they never found their kid, and that was the end of that.
Well, they did after they branded after, but yeah, right. Because so now you have a group of cows, and you have a group of calves.
Yes.
So you probably had, my guess is he probably had 4 or 5 different pens or portions of the corral that were penned off with
Correct.
calves, and then there's a long chute that leads up to the calving table.
Yep. Will's son Grant, who's part of the ranch himself, was guiding the calves, grabbing the tail, pushing them through, and
Head first.
Head first onto the table.
And what he was doing, one other thing, wasn't he? Was he yelling out if there were bull or heifer?
Yes, yes.
And why is that crucial?
Well, there is a little situation which is a bit close to home. Uh, yeah, they were castrated. You know, and I thought, yeah, Will had this knife, and he was just straight off. But the second part to that situation was a bit painful to see. You cut them off, and he's holding them like a trophy. Put them in a Ziploc bag. You know, it's not a pleasant sight. I was able to watch that, but then he would, I don't know how detailed you want to really go, but he shove it
Go
back.
crazy.
Yeah, you got to shove it back into the cow, and he had that. Will was doing that, and that was his job, and he did that. It was like 2 seconds for 2 testicles, and that's it, straight away into a Ziploc bag.
Well, you said shove something back into the. What do you mean?
I'm sure it's just, you know, shoved his penis back into the. I don't know. Yeah, it was just the weirdest thing. I'm like,
well, cows don't have penises. Only
I
in
don't
America.
know. Yeah, they do in England. I don't know the anatomy of a cow. I just know.
Well, a cow is a female cattle. I'm sorry. You know, I shouldn't bust on you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't bust me on that. Don't bust my balls.
That's right. That's right. They've already been cut off.
Yeah, but I don't know what it was. It just, I don't know. It was the weirdest thing. And then he would bring over testicle, and he goes, "Look, there's 3 cases, or 2 or 3 cases. Slice, 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 and there's your bull. And we're gonna fry them later and enjoy that. Rocky
So
Mountain oysters."
you cleaned some Rocky Mountain oysters, did you?
Well, I did not. Like I
Why
said,
not? It's
it was a
fun.
bit. Oh no, Ben, my son Ben, and my wife Trisha, your sister, they did,
Yeah.
and they were cleaning. And
Why didn't you do it, King? Why didn't you do it?
wow, I'm used to being a city lad, and that's not, like I said, I'm like, oh
It's
God,
not
no,
gonna
no, no.
hurt you.
I
The most
know, but
dangerous part of cleaning Rocky Mountain oysters is cutting yourself, honestly.
I get, well, I was reading the Financial Times. I don't know what I was doing. I decided to stay out of it.
I'm just jerking your chain.
But they asked my son Ben to go and grab the bulls from the Ziploc bag that are over by the table, by the branding table. And he went out there with a new Ziploc bag. He just stuffed his hand in, grabbed them all out, dropped them in, and every
It's like
other ranch
fruit.
hand was there. They said they were well impressed with him. They said, "Wow, you're doing good. You're
Boy.
not a boy. That's completely right." So he went back, cleaned them with Trisha, and Trisha fried them up. And like I said, close to home. They taste
Well,
fine, but then you
in
think
the
about
old
what you're eating.
days, you had a branding iron. We'll get that in a second, but they have electric branding iron that's actually plugged into electrical outlet. In the old days, you'd have and most people in Cherry County still brand this way. You got a branding stone that's heated by propane, probably, and then so you heat up your branding iron. But on that stove, a lot of times I've seen many times where guys they'll take one of those castrated nuts and
Just to
Rocky
eat them.
Mountain oysters, as we call them, and they clean them right on the spot, and they throw it on the branding iron, and it just sizzle, and they flip it with their pocket knife or whatever, and you got yourself some automatic protein right there, the branding.
And they were out there for a good 3 or 4 hours. So yeah, they needed that. It's That's a process. The branding itself, I did it a couple of times, and that didn't bother me in the slightest. It was just, you're going to do this, and it's going to be done. I know the importance of branding, so I have no problem with doing it myself. I just had to make sure I just really stuck it down on that
Hold
cow.
firm,
Yeah,
hold
hold
firm,
firm.
hold
And ben,
firm. There's going to be a bit of smoke, and you're going to smell it, and you
yeah,
smell some burning flesh, and the calf is going to waller out. But it's pretty quick. I mean,
it is.
it's probably quicker than me being tased at one time.
You made more of a noise than they did.
Probably true.
No one else would ever do that. I'm not, well, not
Yeah.
unless you
Well,
have to.
so were you working the backside of the calf, or like where Grant was? Were you in there at all?
Well, where Grant
Because
was,
that's you remember that's Vaughn's favorite
yes.
thing. She likes the leggy legs, she says,
Yeah,
and you
she
have to
actually,
hold up.
well, Ben was invited into that little area, jump on the back of the calves, push him through. And he was loving that. He thought that he's not going to forget that in a long while. That was just something. And he branded as well.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Well, so Vaughn's and maybe I don't know if you witnessed this or not, but that position is not exactly the best position in my opinion, because I'd rather brand cows, honestly, because what happens, again, it's like a radio show, not everyone's listening to the first podcast, so we'll have to repeat some of this stuff. But what happens when you are branded and castrated simultaneously, and your leg is up, and you are on the backs, and you're the one holding their leg, and you're on the backside of that calf, what happens? You're probably gonna shit your pants, right?
Yes.
So, and it's not a lumpy, pleasant, like little plop of poop. It is a stream of diarrhea right in your face. Did you see Grant plastered at all?
Oh, I didn't. I think those shit beforehand. It's just they. No, I don't know. I didn't see that. Grant came back just smelling a burnt cow and didn't smell nothing else. I mean, I've been hit with the cow shit as well, just through being under a tent when we was checking to see, how pregnant the cows were.
Oh yeah, you were pranking cows at one time. Yeah.
Yeah, I drove home with a lump of shit on my shoulder without realizing.
Yeah.
Then
Good for you.
yeah, it's fine. I don't care too much about that. It's my wife does. She kept thinking of farting all the way home, 6 hour drive back to Denver, and she was complaining about that. But yeah, it is what it is. That's the life you live.
Yep.
So yeah, Ben did the branding. Of course, we had to apply more pressure than he could he can actually give. But yeah,
Well,
he
he's probably too short to be able to get that kind of leverage. Probably.
yeah,
I mean, because you have to the table. So this and listeners go to my Instagram page or YouTube page, and you can see this where Steve branded a calf. But the branding table is probably what, waist high, maybe a little
yep,
roughly. And so my guess is the branding table was, Ben might have been just a little bit taller than that table, but not much, right? So it
that's
probably was
right.
hard for him to get the leverage to hold the branding iron on.
Yeah, he pushed down on the
So,
top of it, and I was like,
but
and
you King have got no excuse.
no, I took care of a few, and it was, rewarding. You see them.
Yeah,
It's funny because watching the rest of them do that, the ranch hands do it. You would hear you got two types of calves. You got ones that are squealers, and you got ones that don't give a shit. And I'm like, all
yeah.
right,
Some will just lay there and take it.
yeah, yeah. It's just, I'm like, wow. So the whole day was just you learn something. You learn something, and the importance of this. And I must admit that video of myself, Brandon, as of this morning, got a dislike. God, here we go. 'Cause I
By
posted
who?
on. Oh, I have an old friend that.
What did you post on YouTube also?
No, no, no. I posted on Facebook.
Facebook.
And she disliked it, and it's like, well, I understand people are not going to like it.
Well, a lot of people think it's an inhumane way of treating animals, I suppose, but branding's crucially important to
Yeah,
the sandhills where you've got, there's 250,000 head of cattle or whatever, and you got to be able to distinguish whose is who.
yeah,
That's how you do it.
yeah. There
And
was,
like I said, I would argue to your friend that we in the Powder Ranch do it more humanely than our neighbors. There's really honestly not there's not that much stress on that calf. I
yeah,
mean, obviously, if Grant was being a jerk or whatever, I mean, Ben, they're having fun, Ben riding the calf, this, that, and the other. But all you got to do is get those calves lined up. You try and make sure, you try and put as less stress on them as possible, and then you just put them in the table. Table goes over. They do, it's no different to me than, you know, I recently got a big hunk of stuff cut out of my nose. Well, I had to have 20
yeah,
shots in my nose. That wasn't pleasant either.
yeah.
It's no different. It's no different. It's the same thing.
And these calves, once they've been branded, they go off running and they're all trotting around and they're happy. I'm like, well, that they obviously weren't bothered
And
by
as
it.
the day goes by, the noise of those cows calling for those calves dissipates because as soon as the calf runs off, they're running into the same part of the corral that the cows are, right? And so they usually pair up pretty quick. I don't know if you watch that process or not, but they do.
Yes,
They'll find their mother pretty quick.
yeah. I mean, just that sense of smell. I mean, you got your sense of smell back. You found your family after your nose situation. But I know it's a fascinating thing, and we got to eat their balls at the end of it, and it's just I'm not going to forget that. And my family, for example, they're like, oh, absolutely fascinated. They're seeing what the video I showed them and the photos of Ben in the corral, bottle feeding calves as well. I mean, just the whole day was the time we were there is just something else. Every Englishman or English woman have the intention of wanting to have a ranch life. It's not easy. It's not easy. They keep thinking it's easy, but it's not. It's I had that feeling for a little while where it's like, oh, I'd love to go and be Will's work hand. Trisha looked at me and went, "No, you don't. You haven't got quality to do that. It's a job. It's
Well,
what
hell,
you.
King, he wouldn't even let you out of the pickup.
I know. Yeah, you don't trust
No,
me.
trust me. You that corral is it. You've got you have to pay attention. Like Vaughn said, That's the one thing she got out of it, is that you have to be very aware
Yeah,
of your surroundings, very
yeah,
aware, 360 degrees.
yeah. I
But
mean,
that's good for you.
everyone gets the impression you can have a beer after or during, and no, you need to be 100% concentrated on the situation. If you don't,
No, I don't. I don't think I'd be branding cattle when I was inebriated. I don't think it's a pretty good. It's not a. It's not a
well,
good
that's what they
idea.
give they give the impression of that when you see these
Nah,
shows. It's not that
no. It's
way.
they. I mean, obviously afterwards, people. When the job is finished, finish the job. Another cowboy
Hmm.
trait, finish the job. Yeah, then maybe somebody partakes in that stuff, but
Yes,
not
exactly.
during it. It is hard work. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a long day and it's exhausting and I mean, it's just another day for them. But yeah, if you're not used to it, you know, it's
it's
something
yeah,
different.
yeah. I
Something different. Now, go ahead. I'm sorry, Steve.
No, I was all right. I was just going to say it's not something I'm really cut out for, but I got the experience. I'll do it again in a heartbeat. I'll make sure I get out of the truck. I don't care.
Well, careful what you wish for. So I think you mentioned to me that there was it was pretty. The wind came up later, or there was dust squalls,
Oh yeah. I
or
mean, there was
it's very dry out there right now.
we had
Although it
all the
snowed quite
way
a bit
there,
yesterday.
all the way there. We had uh, 60-mile-an-hour winds at least, all the way from Denver the day before. I mean, we saw some land that had been burnt down to the ground just
Hmm.
outside of uh, the ranch, and the sand hills were exposed to the point where sand was blowing across the highway. It was just, I mean, it's sad. The situation there is crazy with the
The
wind.
good news is that it snowed, I think, pretty decently yesterday. We
Okay,
got a little moisture, but yeah,
well, those
it's
those
it's a
winds were still.
dusty, dirty. It's
Yeah, those winds were still there, and they picked up in the afternoon, and Um, I then said to my son, I'm like, all right, let's get in before we start getting dusty. It's just like the weak mentality that I have. Oh, it's getting a bit dusty now. I need to get out.
let's get in before it gets dusty. Come on, Steve. You're tougher than that.
Yes, yeah. Well, in your eyes, I'm not.
The, hey, I'm the one sitting here with freaking headphones on talking about it and haven't done it since 11 years ago was my last
Yeah.
Friday.
No, it was, I mean, Will came back in from finishing, just it's a right mess. It was just pretty extensive dust all over him. It was pretty
Dirt
bad. Dirt and
and
dust and
feces and blood and all of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He had a real fun day. I'm sure of it. And and that's not the only time. Obviously, he's got to do it again. He's got to do it again. It's the cycle. It's the cycle that he runs.
that's right.
And I was fascinated with it. I was really
So
fascinated.
you said that again. I think you said that it exceeded your expectations. I mean,
Hmm.
verbalize a little bit more. I mean, what did it leave you with? Leave our listeners with a little something here.
Well, it left me with the realization that it's, like I said, it's not a straightforward, easy job. Some people may have seen an Englishman on Amazon. He's a car guy, Jeremy Clarkson. He's rented out, well, he bought a farm and he brought many animals, pigs, sheep, and with the advice of someone, he tried to run that farm. It made for funny television because it's just not as easy as it sounds. And my respect for Will and the ranch hands is huge because of what they have to deal with every day. Whether it's almost missing my wedding with his sister just because there's cattle that needs tending to. I mean, are you aware of that? What happened there with his? I think he was weaning, and it has to be done. And they almost
I think there was a crunch line there to
crunch.
get
Yeah,
something done. Yeah, I do kind of remember.
but it's the
Well, I
respect
mean,
I have for him.
there's X amount of calendar days on the, as you say, it's a cycle, and sometimes if things get delayed because of weather or
Hmm.
because of breakdowns or because of natural disaster, whatever, then your calendar shrinks, and then there's just no. I mean, you just don't have the option to just well, we're not going to do that today. Well, it's the only day we can do it, so you know.
Exactly. And he asked that
You
question
know,
as well. Will asked that question to me as well. Did it what you expected? Absolutely. I would never forget that moment. I've told all my family about it, all, and they were wish we could have been there. And that's the fortunate thing I have. I was there, and
yeah.
I helped to a certain degree. I helped to my capabilities. I understand there were some instances that I just could not partake in. It's a highly stressful position to have.
Yep. Okay. So, Steve King, are you still a hybrid? You think you're still a hybrid between a cowboy and an egghead?
Well, I'm heading that way as well, more so hybrid.
Heading there from where?
Well, it's just so I like wearing cowboy hats, but honestly, this is
You
very
know, I don't wear it unless it's a joke, kind of honestly, because I actually think that if you wear a cowboy hat, you better damn well
earn it.
have earned it,
Yes, I agree with
and
that.
it takes years to earn that hat, in my opinion.
Well, my employment has always been office, and then I moved to the automotive industry. But as of yesterday, I actually applied to be a park ranger of all jobs, and I got offered a job yesterday as a park ranger. So I'm going to be more outside now.
Really,
Yeah,
congratulations.
yeah, it's
Well,
a
Steve King, I hate to inform you, but they're out in parks. The wind might blow, so you
be a little bit dusty, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah.
That's the life I want to live, and I'm outdoors, and that situation has arisen, and let's see how I deal with it.
Sounds good. All right, thank you, my friend. Well,
Well,
or my
thank you.
brother-in-law, and we will talk soon.
Yeah.